A police cruiser sat trapped in a driveway, blocked by a bright red golf cart. Officer Jack Reynolds was trying to respond to a 911 call, but HOA President Karen refused to move, citing lawn violations. The whole thing was caught on camera, and what happened next stunned the entire neighborhood. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Jack stared at her for a moment, not out of disbelief. He knew Karen too well for that, but in stunned calculation. This wasn't the first time she'd flexed her imagined authority like a club. But today was different. Today, someone's life hung in the balance. The clock was already ticking, each second burned away under the heat of her pettiness. The Florida sun hadn't even reached its peak, but Jack felt the pressure mount behind his ribs like a rising tide. Karen shifted her stance, deliberately planting herself more squarely between Jack and the cruiser. Her visor was pulled tight across her forehead, casting a shadow that couldn't hide the gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. She wore that HOA lanyard like a badge of honor, though Jack had seen toddlers at a sheriff's station wear a sticker with more humility. "I'm not asking you," Jack said, his voice firm but level. "There's a woman in danger right now. Elderly, alone, possibly armed intruders. Do you really want to be the reason I'm not there in time?" She clicked her tongue and shook her head. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before violating Code 14.3 on driveway encroachment. I already filed a complaint. 3 complaints, actually." She gave a pointed glance at the neat file folder on the passenger seat of her golf cart, labeled in fluorescent green, "Infractions, Reynolds, Jack." He could feel the heat rising, not just from the sun baking the asphalt, but from the outrage clawing at the back of his throat. He stepped forward, just enough to force her to lean back. "Karen, you're obstructing law enforcement during an active emergency. I don't think your HOA charter covers that." Karen scoffed. "The HOA charter overrides neighborhood traffic when safety is at stake. And let me tell you, Jack, when people start bending the rules, the whole community suffers. What's next? People planting azaleas without approval?" The words landed like a slap to common sense. Somewhere in the distance a siren wailed, not his, and Jack knew backup had already been dispatched to the scene he was supposed to be at. But every second counted, and this blockade wasn't just a nuisance, it was a threat, a life-threatening one. He narrowed his eyes, jaw tightening, not in anger but in resolve. This was no longer a petty turf war. This was obstruction. And Jack Reynolds had never backed down from that. Jack stepped forward, just enough that the gravel beneath his boots scraped loudly, breaking the stiff silence that had settled over the cul-de-sac like a heat wave. He wasn't angry. Anger was a luxury he couldn't afford in moments like these. What surged through him instead was pure, mission-honed urgency. That sick knot behind his sternum wasn't from ego or pride. It was the cold understanding that while this petty tyrant performed her little morality play, someone could be bleeding out in a living room just minutes away. He glanced at the GPS again. 4 blocks. That was nothing in theory, but it could mean everything now. A wrong move, a slow breach, a missed perimeter. He'd trained for years to shave seconds off his responses, to move faster than hesitation. And now, a glorified neighborhood monitor in a golf cart was undoing all of that with a smug grin and a laminated badge. Karen's arms remained folded, but Jack noticed the faint twitch in her fingers, the tiniest tremble she probably mistook for righteousness. She wasn't used to confrontation. She was used to fear, compliance. People moved out of her way because it was easier. Easier to roll their eyes and let her measure their grass than to fight her manufactured sense of authority. But Jack wasn't built for appeasement. He was built for precision. He lived in the seconds people like her wasted. "Karen," he said again, voice flat now, stripped of all attempt at diplomacy. "There is a woman inside a home, alone, terrified, and possibly at gunpoint. You are standing between me and her." Karen's chin tilted upward, the classic pose of someone drunk on their own rules. "And what happens when I let you go, Jack? Everyone starts thinking they can ignore protocol just because they've got a badge and a siren. That's not how we maintain order." Jack exhaled sharply. "Order?" he echoed, barely able to keep his volume in check. "You think this is about order? This is about life and death, real stakes, not lawn measurements or mailbox paint colors." The neighbors lingered across the street. Mr. Barlow, the retired postman, shifting awkwardly behind a row of hydrangeas. A teenager on a bike, frozen mid-pedal. No one moved. No one intervened. Jack knew why. Karen ruled this block like it was her personal fiefdom, and they let her. But not today. Today, someone would call her bluff. And it wouldn't be him. It would be the job, the badge, the oath. He reached for his radio. Jack's voice had dropped into the register he reserved for breached perimeters, armed suspects, and tense negotiations behind locked doors. It was a tone stripped of emotion, honed razor-sharp by years of training, and Karen, self-proclaimed queen of lawn ordinances, was finally beginning to understand she'd overstepped into a world she didn't belong in. Her mouth opened, but the words tangled in her throat. For the first time, her confidence cracked. Not under threats, but under something far more unnerving. Legal authority wielded by someone who knew exactly what it meant. Jack didn't press her. He didn't need to. The power had shifted the moment he spoke the word interfering. It was no longer a neighborhood dispute. It was a matter of law. And the law wasn't on her side. He pressed the screen on his phone with mechanical precision, speaking into it with a controlled urgency. "Dispatcher, this is Reynolds. I'm at Greenlawn Oaks. I've been blocked from emergency response by a civilian using a vehicle, requesting immediate tow and backup. Potential obstruction of justice." The pause that followed wasn't silence, it was judgment. Karen seemed to feel it seep into her skin like cold water. "That's not... I didn't mean..." She stammered, her arms falling from their crossed position, dangling now like forgotten defenses. "You're making this bigger than it is. It's just a golf cart." Jack turned to her with a stare that could have stopped a sprinting suspect. "It stopped me from getting to a woman who might be dying. That makes it a hell of a lot more than a golf cart." The approaching hum of tires on asphalt cut through the silence like a blade. A black sheriff's SUV rolled into view, stopping with calculated abruptness. Deputy Marla Jensen stepped out, boots hitting the pavement with purpose, and took in the scene with a glance that needed no clarification. Karen raised a finger, desperate to regain control. "This is HOA property. You can't just..." "Oh yes, we can," Jensen said, voice flat as concrete. "Especially when it's used to obstruct a first responder. You're lucky we're not cuffing you right now." Karen's face drained of color. She looked at Jack as though pleading for mercy, but Jack wasn't interested in theatrics. He was already halfway into the cruiser. The tow truck arrived fast. Hooks latched onto the cart with the indifference of bureaucracy. As the golf cart lifted, flags fluttering, bumper sticker tilted like a joke on bad governance, Karen's screeches filled the neighborhood, shrill and directionless. Jack didn't spare her another glance. The siren screamed to life, and with one decisive jerk of the wheel, he was gone. The footage was grainy, pulled from a neighbor's front porch camera, but it didn't need high definition to deliver its punch. The scene spoke for itself. Jack Reynolds in full uniform, trying to exit his driveway, calm but insistent. Karen Whitmore, arms folded, lips drawn into a tight line, standing firm beside her ridiculous, flag-draped golf cart like some tin-pot dictator defending her turf. It played like satire, but the stakes were too real for laughter. The incident was already resolved in the field, but online it had just begun. Local reporters picked it up first. HOA President blocks officer from 911 call, ran across the bottom of the screen on Channel 4. But it didn't take long before national outlets turned it into a case study in bureaucratic arrogance. People were angry, not just at Karen, but at what she represented. Unchecked petty power, misused authority, the slow corrosion of common sense under the weight of HOA rulebooks and self-important enforcers. Social media lit the match. Within hours, the clip was sliced, zoomed, captioned. TikTok edits set it to dramatic orchestral music. Twitter threads debated her motives like scholars analyzing a historical conflict. Facebook comments raged, laughed, or shared their own HOA horror stories. Reddit christened her Marshall Karen of the cul-de-sac. She was a meme now, a symbol, and no HOA charter could save her from that. The HOA board, previously full of loyal allies who'd nodded along to her crusades against mailbox height violations and unauthorized lawn ornaments, scrambled for cover. Under public pressure, and likely the advice of legal counsel, they voted to suspend her indefinitely. The citation for obstruction, while technically minor, cemented her fall from grace. And the judge's ruling? That was the true poetic ending. Mandatory attendance at a civic education course, led by Jack Reynolds. When the decision was read aloud in the courtroom, there was no smug smile from Jack. No triumphant smirk, just a single raised eyebrow and a curt nod, the closest he'd come to gloating. Because for him, this was never about revenge. It was about principle, about reminding people that badges don't grant superiority, but neither do clipboards and bylaws. The class was scheduled for 8 weeks. Attendance was mandatory, participation required, and Karen, once queen of the cul-de-sac, was now a student in humility, learning, one lesson at a time, how real authority worked when it wasn't backed by ego but by service.